John, thank you so much for joining us here at Super Return International.
Thanks for having me.
Do well by doing good is obviously a key theme. We've been seeing a lot more at the top of the agenda, the ESG factors, and I think the S of the ESG is particularly seems to have taken hold in the US, particularly, I'd say. Tell me about that and what expectation level there is now for firms to be doing the responsible and good in society.
Well, that one's a little trickier. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the phrases ESG or DEI have been somewhat politicized. If we take a step back, the whole initiative, the whole consciousness of ESG and DEI was to create a better society and to create a better future for our next generation. And so whether we're talking about environment, social, and governance, or we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's somewhat complicated because I don't know anybody who actually disagrees with those ideas and that philosophy. But yet, when we actually implement them, when they get politicized or they become more mechanical, unfortunately, then it loses some of its meaning. And so getting back to the idea of ESG and what that means for CalPERS and for us, I think it has to be a genuine commitment to saying, hey, look, how can we actually make the environment better and make money from that as well? And that benefits everybody. How can we diversify the wealth that actually is being generated from these incredible innovations that are happening? And then, of course, how can we make sure that we have governance at a time where there's so much need to make sure that innovators are investing responsibly? And so, no better time than now to actually really think about the essence or the ethos of what ESG stands for, and not lose it for the sort of label that it's become.
You talked there about innovation, just segueing into what innovation you're seeing in terms of disruptive technologies potentially, and there's been obviously a top of the agenda here this week. Gen AI has been a big topic. So talk to me about that and what you're seeing and what influence you think artificial intelligence is going to have both within your business but also for the businesses you're looking at, being part of.
Sure. Well, probably isn't enough time in any one interview to actually go over what the implications are of artificial intelligence, right? Generative AI, however you want to call it. But I think if I just sort of frame it out, realistically, we believe that AI, for lack of a better phrase, it is a brand new cycle of technology, and it probably is as impactful as the invention of the semiconductor. The nature of technological revolutions usually have a couple things in common. First, it's a technology that actually helps create more technology. So the steam engine or the industrial revolution or the semiconductor, all of those things help create more technology. Very famously, the semiconductor was called Moore's Law, right? That processing speed doubled every 18 months for the same price. Well, artificial intelligence actually exhibits that at a more logarithmic basis. So something that, and this is an exaggeration to some degree, but maybe not, something that took 100 hours 3 years ago, took 10 hours last year, it takes 1 hour this year. And so when you think about the implications of that, and let's ignore, or let's not consider the concept or discussions of sort of generalized intelligence and replacing the human mind, and maybe so, maybe not, that's a different conversation. But the time machine aspect of what AI does is profound. And anytime you have a technology or an innovation that actually allows you to increase processing that quickly, you have to see that there's going to be a lot of value in that. And then you can sort of separate those into two buckets. First, there's the investing in the technology itself to see if you can find and be in the right technologies that allow you to benefit from that flywheel. And then the second is what gets most of the conversation, Emma, is how can we take all of human knowledge and actually package it, repackage it, reconstitute it into something that is more usable faster for humans. And that can be anything from call centers to diagnoses to accounting to legal documents to travel to...
The potential for speeding up processes is phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. And so there's going to be a lot of money made in both those areas. There's probably one other area that's interesting that is not getting as much attention today that will, is the idea of super science. So if you think about science, right? Science is just humans looking at data and saying, well, let's just describe what's going on. And so Newton sees an apple fall and says, well, let's calculate the speed of that, and comes up with gravity. And Einstein comes up with his theories. And they're all just humans looking at data and saying, well, let's describe this. And we do this in life sciences, we do this in material sciences, we do this in computer sciences. Well, imagine a world where a computer powered by AI can look at the data and you say, look, what do you think is going on? But that's not enough. The idea is that you have to give the computer the ability to actually create its own experiments and say, okay, well, if that's what you think is going on, what experiment would you run? Versus the human saying, here's my biases of what I want to run. Because it's been famously said that genius is not just knowing what is about to come, it's actually knowing what not to look at. So the human condition is quite biased in its knowledge. And so the easiest way to think about it, and the soundbite is that, well, if AI is just regurgitating existing human knowledge, no new human knowledge will actually be created. If AI combined with a laboratory or combined with actually data acquisition, then the breakthroughs of science can start to happen. And you can imagine what could happen potentially in material sciences, in life sciences, in astrophysics, et cetera. And it's really powerful. So that's exciting. Now, not a lot of people are talking about that yet, but I think that next year at this point, probably will be a pretty big topic.
Well, I'd love to have you back here this time next year to talk to you more about that and it to be top of the agendas. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It's been fantastic and fascinating to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Emma. Thank you for inviting me today.